코코아 생산량이 세계 2위라서 우리나라에서는 초콜릿과 연결되어 있는 아프리카의 나라 가나. 가나에서는 정치 안정 그리고 경제의 성장을 이룩하고 있으면서 그 나라의 여성들을 더 많이 교육시키고 더 많이 사회에 참여하기 위해서 노력하고 있습니다. 이러한 노력에 대해서 주한 가나 대사 엘리자베스 니콜 대사께 듣겠습니다. Actually, reading through your CV, the 31st December women's movement caught my eye. It seems very interesting. Tell me, what is it?
The 31st December Women's Movement is a non-governmental organization in Ghana. It was started by the former First Lady of Ghana, who is married.
What year? Around?
In 1982.
82?
Yes, at the time the president of Ghana was J.J. Rawlings, Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings. He came to power through a coup d'etat, and then we had democratic elections, and he won 2 terms before he handed over power. And it was during his tenure as a military leader that his wife also felt, with a group of ladies, of course, his wife also felt that it was time to start thinking about the welfare of children and women, because in the developing world generally, the situation of women is not very encouraging. And even in the developed world, if you go into it, you see that there is a lot more that can be done to improve the welfare of women. So she felt, while she had some power, she could channel it to better use by organizing women to improve their standard of living. And you know that women, when we have the opportunity to improve ourselves, of course we think about children, and then we think about men, be it our husbands, our sons, or our brothers. So in effect, improving the status of women will be improving the status of the whole community. So she felt that it was time for us to do something about the situation of women in Ghana. And so that is how the movement started. And then the name too, it was named after the process. The process which brought J.J. Rawlings into power. He came to power on 31st December 1980. Yes, 1982. And then women were able to rally around a figure to help ourselves to improve our better, because of the process that came into being on that.
It was a very, very visionary type of movement.
Yes.
So how did that affect, and it was very early on, the 1980s, actually quite early.
Yes.
So since then, how has the situation in Ghana changed or improved?
During the early stages of the women, of course, there was a lot of agitation for the government to take action to improve the status of and the condition of living of women. But you know, some of these issues really have their roots in the culture and the tradition of the people. So what happened was that there was a lot of sensitization, because when you are dealing with things that have their roots in culture, you have to be very, very careful, and you have to let the people understand why it is that they must think differently. So we entered into a very aggressive program of sensitization, especially opinion leaders and men, and you know, people in authority, to let them know the plight of women as exists, because sometimes they even take everything for granted that this is how it should be, to the extent that the women eventually come to agree and accept that, no, I'm a woman, so this is how it should be for my situation. But after the sensitization, everybody in the community sat up and began to realize that, no, this thing that we've been doing since time immemorial, this thing that we've inherited from our ancestors, is not the right way to go about things. So maybe this is the time for a new beginning, a new rethinking, so that we put things right. And so that was the greatest achievement. That
must have been such a difficult process.
Well, from the beginning, yes, it was. But eventually, people started thinking, and in fact, to the extent that even some high-profile people in the communities, I remember I heard one of them saying that when they begin to think about the way they've been treating women, sometimes they even feel ashamed that they are men.
Don't you have a female, the Minister of Foreign Affairs?
Yes, in fact, we have about 20% of the Ghanaian cabinet is made up of women.
I think that's very significant.
we have a female Chief Justice. We have a female head of the Statistical Service, and then we have a female Attorney General. Until recently, we used to have a female Speaker of the National Assembly. Yes. And so we are making quite some strides, but we still feel that there's still a long way to go, because I believe that until we get about 40% representation to start with for women, we haven't gotten anywhere.
Good for you. 40% is a good number.
That's what we are striving for.
Less than 50, but you know.
Yes.
But you know, I think in terms of your challenge is to sort of balance, take the entire country with you in this quest, because obviously from what I hear, the rural societies versus what is happening in the central government is not kept pace, do not have the same kind of pace.
Yes. You see, it's not because of the culture, you know, and lack of education. Majority of women in the rural areas are not educated to the primary level, even though we have gender parity at the primary level. But when you take the older generation, a lot of them are not educated, and then also they are not empowered, you see. So until you have a universal education and empowerment to some degree, you will still have a situation whereby the people will continue to be rooted in their beliefs, and the traditional practices and culture will still have a lot of influence on them. I believe that very soon, not the too distant future, we will have a situation where the women themselves, in fact, that is what the 31st December Women's Movement was, you know, all about. And we had a representation in almost every district. So by and large, we know the condition has greatly improved, but we still believe that there's a lot of things to be done. Yes, No, in every society, in every country, you have a little more enlightenment. Even here, I suppose, in the cities than in the rural areas. So it happens that way. But now, generally, I think with the advent of radio, the frequency, we have a lot of radio stations, which goes over all over the country. So with that and the sensitization.
And it's from a scholar's point of view, but are there backlashes against this kind of movement? There resistance, maybe thinking this is not for us, usually among men?
Well, you'll be surprised that in some cases it's even amongst women. They seem to resign themselves to the condition, thinking that that is how it should be because I'm a woman. You see, I have a daughter. I have two daughters, and one of them, my people keep telling them, friends or relatives keeps telling her that no, you are a woman. So she's not the type who wants to go to the kitchen all the time, you see. And as a way of reprimanding her, my sisters will tell her that no, you have to go to the kitchen because you are a woman. And she'll be fighting them all. Why should I go to the kitchen because I'm a woman? Is there nothing else that I can do as a girl other than going to the kitchen? So these are some of the inherent cultural beliefs that we have, which we ourselves as women, we find it difficult to let go. But others too are perpetrated by men, of course. As you said, they want to hold on to the position of superiority that they have, and they want the status quo to maintain. So they fight against some of these things. But I think generally the attitude of Ghanaian men to gender equality is not that difficult. Yeah, I think generally they have a more liberal idea about that, and it's not as serious as I hear from other African countries, but we still have a long way to go. Yeah.
But that may be one of the reasons that Ghana is doing so well in their economic development. Is one of the most rapidly developing countries in Africa, Western Africa.
Yeah, yeah. You'll be surprised to hear that we had one Ghanaian, in those days it was a Gold Coast intellectual called Dr. Agri. Agri, yes. He was born in 1875 and died in 1927. Yeah. And he was a trailblazer in African politics and African enlightenment. And in those days, he said, one of the surest ways to keep a nation down is to educate the men and neglect the women. If you do that, yes. And then he went on to say that if you educate a man, you educate one individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate the whole family. Those days. So he was very, very, very gentle, sensitive. And this saying has been known to a lot of Ghanaians. That is why when you talk about women's empowerment, Ghanaian men are not that apprehensive, or they don't feel much threatened about it, because we were used to this kind of thing since time immemorial. Yes.
Such a visionary.
Yes, yes. And so that is how it is. That's the background to.
So I mean, it explains a lot about why the future seems so bright.
Yes,
for
yes,
your
it does. It does.
But tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, you talk about your daughters, two daughters. I have three. But you obviously serve as the role model for your daughters.
Yes.
How did you from the society when it was much more difficult to be educated and to be out in the government field, become who you are today?
My father was a civil servant, so he was educated, and my mom was also educated to the primary level, which at that time was education enough. And there were a lot of us, 9 of us, and I'm the eldest.
Oh my goodness.
And my father did his best to educate all of us. There was no discrimination. There were 6 girls and 3 boys. There was no discrimination. And my grandfather on my mother's side too was also educated to the primary level, which was also enlightenment in those days.
Even greater at that time.
Yes. Because what they knew with the sort of education they had, we didn't know at that level in modern times, see, because they were forced somehow to learn. And so we had education, at least those of us who were willing to educate
that
ourselves.
is true.
Yes.
You have to be willing to be able to go to school. Yes. What do you encourage your daughters to do?
My daughters, the first one has completed her first degree. She completed in the United States. And then the second one is doing engineering in the UK. And I give them the liberty and the freedom to pursue whatever interests them. So I'm waiting for them to come and tell me what they want to do in life. Yes, definitely after finishing school, they would have to find whether they want to do work on their own or join the civil service or the private sector or wherever. It's up to them. Yeah.
But they have so much more opportunities and chances, whatever they want to do.
Yes, they have more opportunities and chances than we had or I had. So I'm expecting them to do better with their lives than probably. My second daughter keeps telling me that, well, you've done well, but I want to start doing well at a younger age. Not as
she's
old.
Very ambitious?
Yes.
This young one.
Yeah.
So this is a question that we ask everybody. You are all ambassadors and representing your countries in overseas and in our country, but you see a lot about what the problems are in the world, and you see a lot about what you feel. And I feel that there are lots of energies about wanting to change. So, if you were like president of the world for a day, and I was your genie, and I granted your wish and said, I will change one thing for you because you are the president of the world, what would you change?
Well, of course, I would want men and women to live as equal partners in development. I would want children, every child, to have his due and be able to enjoy his or her childhood. We have a lot of children in the world who don't have the opportunity to be children. Yes, the extent of the chores they even have to do in the house. In fact, in Africa, and I have reason to believe in the whole of the developing world, a lot of children spend almost half the daytime looking for just water, you see. And if a situation is created for them to be nearer or closer to their source of water, whether provision of water in the house or in the community, so that it will free them for other things, there will be a lot more children going to school than they are now. So that is what I want to see. And I want to see countries everywhere realize that basically we are all one. What happens in one country will ultimately affect what happens in the rest of the countries around us. So it is imperative on us to see that everybody in the world is comfortable in a way. Otherwise, people would try to move from one country, from their country, to another country. Yes.
And because they're not happy.
They are not happy. They are not happy.
Well, I'm so glad that you said that. I hope one day it all comes true. Thank you very much for your time again.